Hey everybody, how you doing? Tekking101 here, back with another episode of Check Out All of the Stuffed Animals I Own. That's always a fun time, isn't it? Actually, do you guys know where these little dudes are from? Not Celebi. I think we all know where Celebi's from. He's from the past! Or possibly the future, it depends. But no, these little guys are from Yokai Watch, and I've never played the games, and I've never watched the anime. But a few years back, when I was still working at Dollar Tree, we got this huge shipment in of all these little Yokai Watch plushies, and I'm like, alright, I have no idea what these guys are from, but they look cool, and they only cost $1, so I'll buy a bunch of them, and maybe someday I'll be able to use them in a video. Well, that time is now, because there are Yokai in One Piece, baby! And we're talking about them today. So yeah, obviously we're in Wano Kuni right now, and this is, the island that's based heavily off of feudal Japan. There's little, references to other countries all throughout One Piece, like Dressrosa takes inspirations from Spain and Rome with the Colosseum. You got Thriller Bark, which is like Transylvania, all the creepy old castles and everything, like of, Eastern Europe. So now we have Wano, which is Japan, and Oda is Japanese, so he's taking advantage of this and just throwing in all of these Japanese references. Sometimes they're overt, just kind of like a slap in the face, like, do you get it? Kaido is a dragon, alright, that's kind of something of reference there. But then other times there's like these really tiny references that you really have to be Japanese and know a lot about that history and that culture and that folklore to really get. Either that or you need somebody that can translate it all for you and just lay it out on a silver platter. Thank you, Artur-sama! But yeah, so yokai is certainly a part of that, right? And there's been references to yokai before in One Piece. By the way, yokai is just the Japanese term for a ghost, specter, mysterious being. In fact, actually the kanji that make up yokai is like bewitching or calamitous, and then the kanji for a ghost or a specter or mysterious, something like that. So that's the general idea here for yokai. There's been references to them before in One Piece. The obvious one that comes to mind is Monet. So on Punk Hazard, Monet had the power of the Yuki Yuki no Mi. She can control snow, so Zoro actually referred to as the Yuki Onna, which is a yokai in Japan, a snow woman, alright? And of course, she wasn't an actual yokai, it's just she looked very similar to it because she can turn into snow and had that, like, monstrous appearance and everything like that. But now we're in Wano, and we're getting, like, Tengus, and we're talking about Kappas, and it makes me think, I mean, I might be way off the mark here, but it is starting to make me think, maybe, just maybe, there is an actual, like, yokai species in One Piece. Or rather, there might have been a long time ago, they might have prospered, and now, like, in the present of One Piece, there are only a few left. Alright, now I could be totally wrong on this. Like the Tengu dude, Tengu Hitetsu that we meet in Wano, the guardian of Otama, he might just be a dude that has like a Tengu fetish and likes to wear a long Tengu mask. Maybe, who knows? Or he might turn out to be an actual Tengu. You have Kawamatsu right now, who is being referred to as a Kappa by Hiyori. He might just be a mink that is mistaken for a Kappa, or he might be a legitimate Kappa, like we do not know, alright? Then of course you have everything going on with Kaido, and then you have the demon giants like Oars back in the day. So, there might be another species that was just died off a long time ago, and there's only a few left, and that's the reason we don't see them walking around on every single island. That's the reason we don't, hear characters talk about them very much. Like back at Sabaody, when Sanji and Duval were going to rescue Kami, they were looking at that, that auction sheet there, and we actually got to see, like, dwarves, the Tontada tribe. We got to see, I think minks were on there, snake necks hadn't been introduced, they were on there. That was the reason we don't get to see, like, oh, yokai on the list, is because, oh yeah, they haven't been around in a while. Or, other option, they still exist, it's just they only live in Wano. Alright, and maybe every now and then they might go away from Wano, but for the most part, they just stay in that country. So, I'm gonna take this video and just go into yokai a little bit. There are a lot of them, though. Like, this would be basically like tackling, like, whenever you tackle any sort of, like, folklore or legends in one particular culture. I mean, like, that would be like me going through every single creature that appears in Greek mythology. Like, we'd be here a very, very long time. We could do that sometimes, though, if you want. I'm okay with that. But, yeah, so we're only going to tackle some of the most notable yokai, the ones that, like, most everybody in Japan knows about. And also, even if you haven't grown up in Japan, or even if you haven't watched anime, as you can imagine, there's a lot of references to yokai in anime. I'm sure people, like, you might have even heard of Oni. Like, I think that's the most common one. Like, even people that don't know anything about anime, don't know anything about Japanese culture, you hear the word Oni, you might actually get a picture in your head of, like, oh, it's like an ogre, demon, troll kind of being, that swings a club around. All right, so those are the common ones. But let's go through it. So let's start off actually with the Tengu, because that's one of the first yokai that Luffy runs across upon arriving in Wano. He, runs into Tama on the beach, beats her captives up, and then she takes him back to Amagasa, which is her hometown, which was ransacked by X-Drake, and we get to meet Tengu Hitetsu, who is the descendant of Kitetsu, who was also probably a Tengu, and, he's a swordsmith, and he had the Nidai Kitetsu, and he has another blade on him that's world-renowned, and everything like that, right? So Tengu are yokai that are rather interesting, okay? It's something that, like, changes throughout the periods of history, It's like one time, like, oh no, they're harbingers of war, or they're not good, and then as the centuries pass and tales begin to change and warp and mix, and that's always the fun stuff about, folklore or mythology or even religion. It happens a lot, things that have been around for a very long time in human history, and people have passed on, because remember, written languages, they were around for a while, but the ability to write stuff out and make copies and spread it to the world uniformly, yeah, that's kind of a modern thing, right? So for a very, very long time, we're talking about, like, word of mouth. One person tells a story to another person, they go back to their hometown, tell the story, maybe they changed it a bit, maybe they forgot a few pieces, and it's just because of this, throughout the centuries, things begin to twist and change. So Tengu are not, like, directly referred to as just, like, evil beings right now. Sometimes they're referred to having, like, a conflicted sort of personality. But they are beings that have the power to transform into humans. Their original forms are bird-like, which makes sense considering the Tengu we see in One Piece has wings on his back, so that makes sense. When they transform into humans, though, they get that giant nose, which is indicative of a Tengu. So you see the red face and the long nose, that's a Tengu right there. Furthermore, they can be divided into various types of Tengu. They're usually referred to as humans sometimes that have been trapped in purgatory, and they're stuck in between, like, like the next world and this world. That's also a running theme with a lot of yokai, and also they're humans that have been trapped through pride, excessive amounts of pride, all right? And the really learned ones turn into Dai Tengu, or Great Tengu, like an upper echelon, and then there's a lower echelon called Ko Tengu, which are the ones that are very ignorant, but it's always like an excessive amount of pride. Also something that kind of makes sense with the Tengu that we've seen in One Piece, because they take great pride in creating their blades. In fact, he even said, the blade he had, oh, this is a world-renowned sword right here. So you could take that as maybe a reference to that, excessive amounts of pride and stuff. So yeah, I'm just going on with the assumption that Tengu is really a legitimate Tengu. You might assume, oh, it's just a regular guy or something like that wearing a mask. Maybe, he could be, but is that as fun? Really? Is that as fun? No, it's not. Hell, in his hut, we also saw a tanuki pot. Like, if you look off to the side, there's a pot hanging out that's also a tanuki. So, Oda might just be putting that stuff in as just a reference, like a cute little joke. It's just like, get it? They're in Wano, and there's a tanuki pot right there. You get it? Or he could be hinting, he's like, oh, no, yeah, I'm actually going to do something with this. This isn't going to just be a one-off joke. This is going to be like an entire subset of beings here, right? So, you have Tengu, and like I said, if you go back in time, I'm assuming that the original Kitetsu, the swordsmith that created all of the Kitetsus to begin with, yeah, he was also a Tengu, probably a little bit more of a wrathful one. And that's something else with Tengu. They're also, legend got split a few times, and sometimes they were referred to as, combat specialists, sometimes like war deities, things of that nature. They're like closely related to war. So that might be a cool way to do it. You could have the original Kitetsu being this warmongering kind of like demon sort of Tengu kind of guy. But the Tengu right now we see, Hitetsu, he seems like a rather chill kind of dude. He's raising up Tama. I believe Tama referred to him as grandfather, but that could mean any number of things. It might not actually be her real grandfather, it just might be like, oh, just call me grandpa or whatever like that. But he seems to be like a cool dude, right? Now, we haven't seen him yet. We've only seen him like at the beginning of the series, and I think later on when Tama was, brought back to life with Chopper, healing at Amagasa, but we really haven't seen him do a lot of stuff yet. But I'm looking forward forward to that. He's definitely going to be a major player later on in Wano. Another one that's pretty big is the Kappa, and I went into detail talking about the Kappa in the review a few weeks ago, and I made another video, the Invisible Hockey. I mentioned the Kappas. Kappas, or River Child, are basically these green turtle humanoid children looking things. They're very, very creepy, very slimy, gooey. They love to chew on cucumbers for some reason. Like, yeah, give me a cucumber. And they're usually used to teach children about, like, you know, don't play in the water, or else, you know, or don't wander too far in, or the Kappa will grab up and drag you down, you know. So that's Kappa. A lot of yokai and a lot of, you know, just any sort of mythical creature, they're rather mischievous, like not mischievous. No, that's a word I can't pronounce. They're beings that just love to screw with the living. All right, that's just something that's a common theme throughout the board. I mean, not every single one, but I can't tell you how many. I mean, because I'm a big fan of mythology. I've read a lot about this stuff from multiple different cultures, and a lot of them, pretty much every single one of them, has some sort of being, multiple beings usually, that are like, yeah, they're just little trickster demons that just love to screw with humans, get them lost in the woods, have them accidentally jump off a cliff, you know. It's like, oh, or they get sucked into a time rift and they end up 100 years later and all their loved ones are dead. You know, these joking demons. They just like, hey, and if you actually think about it, though, it's like if you somehow died and you found yourself with some sort of supernatural power and you were still stuck to this mortal plane and you couldn't move on and you were kind of like tethered to this general area, it's like, well, I'm a ghost and I can't leave this forest. So, I mean, maybe after a while you would, maybe for a little bit you would try to help people out, but after a while you might just have to be like 50 years of this shit. You might be like, screw it, I'm just gonna start messing with people. It's like, hey, go over this way, go over this way. And I just need more company, you know? It's like you could go over and get lost in the forest, and then you die, and then you become the next ghost, and then you and I you could screw with people together. At least we're not lonely anymore. But yeah, that exists a lot. Just mischievous little kappas and whatnot. So yeah, as for what Kawamatsu really is, as I said in the last review, he's either a mink that's mistaken for a kappa, or he's a legitimate kappa. You could just because there's been that theory that he's an otter mink this whole time. Well, you could just, you know, it's not confirmed. You could just screw that and just be like, all right, he's not an otter, he's a kappa. Or you could say he's like a subspecies of mink or something. Like, would it be possible for there to be minks that are mythical creatures? We already have mythical zones. We already have like Phoenix Eye and Boot Eye and the plural of these things. But it might not be impossible for there to be, you know, mythical creatures that are minks or based off of minks, right? So we could just roll with that. I threw out my idea of it possibly being like an otter mink that ate a kappa mythical zone, but the problem with that is Kawamatsu can swim, so unless it's like the one exception out of all devil fruits, which I highly doubt, Oda's been pretty good at keeping that consistent. I mean, every now and then you'll come across a devil fruit that'll be able to cheat the system, like you have Perospero. He's like, well, I can't swim, lick, but I can make a sea slug that I can walk over the water. Or you have Aokiji that can freeze the water, or you have Senor Pink that can swim but not in the water. Oda's usually pretty good about not just, he's like, oh, I'm just gonna make a direct devil fruit that's just, you could still swim in the water. That doesn't make any sense, so I'm not gonna go with that anymore. But yeah, those are kappas, right? So now let's talk about Oni. Alright, Oni, as I said, are probably the most well-known of the yokai, alright? They're demons, they're trolls, they're ogres, big lumbering fellows, almost always have horns and fangs, and just generally look mean. You know, you don't want to run into one in an alley at night, you know, it's like, ugh. So Kaido, obviously a reference goes to that. A large hulking brute, although not as large as you might think, but a hulking brute nonetheless. He's got horns, and he also carries around a kanombo, which is a club that is traditionally carried by Oni. And also, something else is that anyone that reads Toriko will know this, though this is not something that stemmed from Toriko, it's just a reference from folklore, but most Oni are either blue or red. Okay, well, Kaido's not red. Well, he's not blue either, but his dragon form is. Ooh! So maybe that's a reference to something. Just throwing it out there. He himself is not blue. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe the color palette in the anime might change, but I'm pretty sure he's not blue. Although, I think in the anime, the scale tattoo that he has is red, so that could be something. Red, human form. When he goes into dragon form, it's blue. So, obviously, there's a lot of dragon references to Kaido. That's pretty obvious. But there's a lot of Oni references, too. Like, it's hard to just escape them. I mean, he looks like an ogre. He does. He's just this giant hulking dude that just hits people with a giant mace. I mean, there you go, right? So, also you gotta figure the demon giant race that was Oars and Little Oars Jr. and everybody that would also be regarded as Oni back in the day. Although I don't know if anybody's directly referred to them as Oni. Oars' title was Continent Puller or Devil, which sometimes, well, Devil is an interesting thing because you can take Devil to mean like Kishin or Oni. I mean, there's a few different ways you can translate that out. But certainly he looks like an Oni, right? And in fact, in Oars' case, he was red. Well, more pinkish in the anime, but reddish, you know, so you can take that to mean with that. Little Oars Jr. was yellow, though, so I don't know. Maybe that comes from the mother's side. I don't know where that comes from there. So yeah, there's a lot of references to Oni, not just in One Piece, but at large. Very popular group of yokai there. There's actually also, like, a tradition in Japan, like, sort of like a ritual to, like, force out the bad Oni and welcome in blessings into your house. What they'll do is they'll take, like, beans, I guess, take these beans and, like, throw them out their front door and shout, like, Oni wa Soto! Fuku wa Uchi! You know, it's just like, Oni, get out! You know, blessings come in! I'm commanding you, blessings! Get in this house right now! That's a kind of a cool ritual. I would do that. I'll take some soybeans and throw them out of my freaking window. Oni wa Soto! Fuku wa Uchi! And I'm like, okay, yeah, get in here right now, blessings! I command you to bless my house! Alright, so that's Oni, right? What else do we got here? Okay. This is something we have not really seen in One Piece. Maybe we have. It's 21 years of a manga. Oda might have fit this in the background somewhere. But I found this one just weird, but it's something I feel like it could totally fit in One Piece, alright? And these are Tsukumogami. You know what these are? Tsukumogami. Alright. Tsukumogami are objects that take on a life of their own. Now you might be thinking like devil, like lasso or like the funk freed. Like no, not like that. They're objects that once they reach 100 years of age. So if you have an object, like if I had, I don't know, this pair of scissors, okay? And this pair of scissors somehow managed to stay in pristine condition for 100 years. I never threw them away. I guess I would have to pass them down to my children if I ever have any, my clones, if I ever clone myself. If I ever find a parallel universe and that version of me has kids, then I'll pass them down to them, okay? And they somehow managed to last 100 years, then they'll turn into Tsukumogami, and they'll like, hi there, how you doing there, kids? I'm Stevie the Scissors. You know, like they'll turn into actual like yokai, like beings and stuff. And so, I mean, that's just a regard for, I guess, you know, family heirlooms and things in Japan. Like, oh, this was something that was passed down from your great-grandfather's era. Maybe it will eventually become a Tsukumogami someday. You know, who knows? So I can't really think off of, I mean, we've seen objects that are living in One Piece. We saw that, like I said, with Lasso and Funk Freed and the objects eating devil fruits and all that stuff. But I don't think we've ever seen just like, you know, Luffy's hanging out on the sunny and then all of a sudden a fishing rod starts speaking to him or something. Like that's like something out of like a Saturday morning cartoon back when I would watch when I was a little kid or something. But, you know, it's a thing that I just thought was funny, and I could see that in Wano, especially since Wano is a really old kind of thing. Maybe it'll be one of Zoro's swords. Who knows? Maybe like Shusui or Katetsu will start speaking to him, you know, like not in a cartoony way. I'm not saying Katetsu's gonna like little eyes are gonna pop out and it's gonna fly out of its sheath and be like, Zoro, you must use me. grab my handle and swing me to and fro. You know, nothing like that. But it is kind of funny, you know, just to imagine that. All right, so that's Tsukumogami. All right, so remember that school teacher, the oddly attractive, you know, snake-necked school teacher in Wano that we see? I was looking into that. I was like, all right, she is also clearly not human, or there's some weird power going on with her because she was a school teacher when she was addressing her class, her neck, like, extended like a snake. And she also had, I believe, like, snake eyes and a snake tongue when her students acted out of line. And they're like, it's like, did I tell you to respond to that question? And she's like, snake neck, like, yeah, I'll gobble you up. And all of the kids are like, oh, teacher, like, they're used to it. So I was like, all right, what's going on with that lady? All right, so what I found was Roku Rokubi. And Roku Rokubi, starting in the Edo period, this is the first time I've ever heard of these things. They're yokai that, there was a time they were yokai where they were humans, or they looked like humans, their heads would detach. So just picture that amount of nightmare fuel for a little bit there. Like, you're talking to somebody that you think is a human, but is actually a yokai. A lot of yokai take the appearance of humans, or they can also, actually, there's classifications for that too. There's classifications for a yokai's true form, a yokai's human form, or the appearance that they can take, and also there's a reason for why they took that form, like some type of mutation. So for like a yokai's true form, you could have a human, animal, plant, object, or natural phenomenon. You have yokai that are like kami, that are like deities, that could take on the form of like natural disasters, like hurricanes and tsunamis and shit. So it doesn't have to be like a physical form in that way, like a human talking to you. But, there are yokai that take that appearance. So you could be talking to somebody one night, it's like, oh man, I'm glad I ran into you, buddy. I was walking home. I was getting kind of spooked. He's like, yeah, there's a lot of crazy happenings around here. By the way, I can take my head off. And just like, ah! So, that was the one version of that. But then there was another version of these Rokubi later on in the Edo period, tales about people's necks stretching when they were asleep. Okay, so I started looking at that lady again. I'm like, all right, that might be the situation there. Now, the thing with this tale, though, and like I said, there's been so many stories throughout. I mean, you can pick and choose. I mean, Oda has creative license here. I mean, for example, with this one, the I keep messing that. Roku Rokubi. There's some tales that say during the day they're normal, but at night, that's when the necks stretch. It was like, well, that teacher was very clearly in the middle of the day, and she was doing that neck stretchy snake crap. So, I mean, but that's Oda. I mean, you don't have to use everything about that legend. You can only take one reference. Like, oh yeah, she's a Rokurubi, but yeah, she could stretch her neck whenever. It's fine. It's who cares? It's like, you get the reference. Okay, it's like, all right, cool. So yeah, that's probably what she's going to end up being. Actually, that lady, that random school teacher, might in fact be the most obvious out of all the yokai we've seen up until now in Wano. Like, she might be like right there. Like, if you want a reason why yokai exist, there she is right there. Because the Tengu dude, like I said, you could always say, oh, it might be a human. We don't know necessarily about Kawamatsu yet. We don't know what he looks like. We don't get the story behind Kawamatsu. I mean, Oars is a demon giant, sure, but here is this, school teacher in Wano that can stretch her neck, and I'm pretty sure it's not because of a devil fruit. I highly doubt that. They do have devil fruits in Wano, but I don't know. I mean, yeah, I guess you could always spin it like, oh, she has this random snake fruit, but, I don't know. Unless she turns out to be like a main character in Wano, like she turns out to be somebody like helping the Kozukis or helping, Orochi's cause, and it's just like, oh, this random school teacher, yeah, she has a devil fruit and it's that power. But I only see her as like a background character right now, and I think it might have been Oda's way of telling us like, oh yeah, here's a random background character that can stretch her neck like a yokai. Yeah, there's yokai that exist in Wano, just roll with it. So the last grouping of yokai I want to mention here are a scary kind of group. Like, we've had a lot of fun up until this point, talking about kappas, oh, they're just little turtle children that drag people underwater and drown them. Yeah, that's hilarious. Objects coming to life, ooh, Matthew, I'm a sword. Yeah, now, let's talk about the Yurei now. Okay, the Yurei are like, they're like not screwing around kind of yokai. They're like, okay, they're basically deities, all right? So they're not just like mischievous little spirits, like, oh, we're gonna make you get lost in the forest. No, they're the ones that are like the vengeful kind of spirits. They're not always vengeful, but they can be. And they've been stuck between worlds for a very long time, and they've gathered a lot of like power and stuff, and these are the ones that can cause like the natural disasters and shit. These are the ones that, you don't want to screw with. These are like the nightmare, like the Grudge kind of deal. Like, that's the kind of stuff you don't want to mess with. They're the kind of ones that, like, you'll be walking down in the middle of the night, be like, oh, it's getting kind of creepy, and instead of, like, you know, oh, there's a Tsuchinoko on the ground just slithering on by. Tsuchinoko are these little guys, you know, Dunsparce from Pokemon is a Tsuchinoko, just like a little snake, you know, cryptid kind of thing floating on the ground. Like, no. No, these are the kind of things, like, you'll be walking home, and in the darkness, you can kind of just feel a wind and an ominous chill, and you're like, ooh, what's going on? And then, like, behind you, there's a woman with super long hair bleeding from the eye sockets, which she has none, and she's like... It, like, sucks out your soul in the process. You know, like, that's the kind of ones we're talking about with the U-Ray. Alright, you know, you ever watch Mob Psycho Season 2, Episode 2, The Dragger? Yeah, she would be in the classification of, like, a U-Ray, you know, like, you don't know. No. You know, so... That would be something to see in One Piece, wouldn't it? Like, you know, okay, Tengu, Oni, there's Kaido, there's Orochi. I mean, we haven't really met a character yet that really gives off that level of sheer terror. And I'll be honest with you, like, I don't even know if it could be done in One Piece. Like, I have no doubt that Oda could write it and draw it. It's just, could he show it? You know, because a U-Ray, like, if we're talking, I mean, it could always be a beneficial kind of U-Ray. They're not always, like, you know, they're not always like that, but... Like, that would be going into some, like, you know, Ito Junji kind of territory, right? Like Uzumaki kind of ghost story kind of shit, you know, where that's more seinen than shonen, yeah, right? So I'm not thinking they might show up. If they ever do show up, it would be really cool to see. There could always be, like, yokai that are deities of Wano, like, sort of like the guardians of Wano, in a sense, that might help in pushing Kaido out. Now, that's just me grasping at straws there, because Oda's never really directly involved, like, the gods in One Piece. I mean, Eneru, he was just a guy that had god complex. He was an actual god. We've never had a situation where it's, like, Luffy's fighting against Lucci, and then, like, the skies part, and then a deity descends, and, like, Luffy, I will give you extra power for this fight. Like, we've never had anything like that. But there might be some sort of deity in Wano that we might learn about. Like, oh, this is the guardian spirit of all of Wano. And then, you know, after Kaido is defeated, you know, we look up and we see the gods smiling in a statue or some shit. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there, right? It would fit. Not to get directly involved kind of deity, but it would fit if it was like, here's a statue in the flower capital. Here's the guardian of Wano. And you look at the statue and it looks like it's frowning because of the state the country is in right now, because of all the pollution and all that crap. But after Kaido's defeated, maybe we cut to some random person sweeping in front of the statue like a few weeks later, and they look up. He's like, was the statue always smiling like that? Like, oh, I guess it must have. And something like that we could see, and it's like a statue of some type of U-Ray. That would be cool, right? Alright, so anyway, that's not all the yokai. Not even close. Like, I might do a sequel to this, but those are the ones I wanted to bring up. You know, just like, okay, Oni, Kappa, the U-Ray, you know, the Roku Bee that we've definitely seen. You know, those kind of ones. Get those out of the way. The Tengu, of course. And then, you know, later on, play it by ear. We'll see in Wano if there's another type of Oni that's introduced, or if it's looking like, oh yeah, no, there really are Oni. They exist, but they're only in Wano. They lived a long time ago. There's not as many as there used to be, but there's still a lot in Wano hanging out. So yeah, we'll see that. We'll get that when we come to it. So yeah, what do you guys think? What do you think, Celebi? Celebi, I don't know why I put Celebi back there. Celebi, I bought at Tekko a few days ago, so I just wanted to have Celebi in a video. But, Celebi is not really based off a yokai. Celebi is more like a nymph or a dryad or like a forest spirit. But there is something in Japan that kind of likens it, and that's a Kodama. Kodamas are like mountain spirits that love nature and things like that, and they usually live inside of trees and stuff. So I don't think Celebi ever lived inside of a tree. But, you know, that's probably like one of the references to Celebi, just like a mountain spirit that tries to preserve the nature of their land. So yeah, that's a reference there. You love it, guys. Japanese folklore and mythology. It ties back to everything. All right, well, I hope you guys had a good video. I hope you had a good video. Hope you guys had a good video time, you know. I hope you had some snacks. I hope you drank some good beverages while watching this video. What are you doing the rest of the day? It's actually a really nice day out. I went fishing earlier with my dad. We had a good time. I didn't catch anything, but it was a fun time. I think I might go practice tennis later. It's a really nice spring day out. You just walk outside, just like, spring is here. Of course, I live in Pennsylvania, so it's very likely it might snow tomorrow. I'm not even kidding. So, yeah, but yeah, Yokai. Have a good one, everybody. Tekking signing out.